Hello there, and welcome back to my continuing series on world government UFO disclosures. I am Keith. Today's installment comes to you, it's a two-parter, courtesy of the governments and citizens of Belgium and Italy, as I relay information to you about their inputs and efforts into the ufology landscape. I'm going to start out with Belgium here. A couple of fun facts here about the country of Belgium. It's been a longtime member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and so it's got close ties with the European Union and America and whatnot. Their population is roughly about 12 million, and that while it only represents about 0.15% of the world's population, their contributions to the ufology effort, while not necessarily as volumetric or as detailed as some of the other representative countries that I've discussed through my series here, Belgium basically had one extremely vital and significant flap or wave back in the late 1980s that kind of qualifies them for inclusion in this series discussion. And as I'll mention to you here, they're also their current contributors, amongst them various ufological communities, groups, and organizations that are currently active right now. So that's why I decided to include the Belgium's governments and societies, citizens, publics, contributions to the ufology, UFO, UAP series here. So I'll mention here the history. The government's, Belgian government's significance or transparency basically zeroes down to that the government really has not been all that much cooperative in disseminating what they know. Their contributions are done on a case-by-case basis, and the public or ufology organizations assist here very, very well. So it's going to be a short list of history of sightings and whatnots, but here we go. I wrote about, in my first book, The Humaniverse Guide to Better Reasoning and Decision Making. That's my reference book, detailing many, many UFO cases of popularity and high significance in nature. The Belgium wave of 1989 and 90 certainly qualifies as one of those. It was a 6-month series in which all areas of their society, from government to the military to the Belgian gendarme police, witnessed for, again, 6 months, various crafts, a lot of these predominantly triangles, but there were other sightings in which they were hundreds of feet across, and these thousands of sightings were witnessed to have involved these craft flying overhead, hovering, stopping dead, landing, taking off, and whatnot. The Belgian UFO wave has been very popular in the ufology, I'll say, entertainment in Hollywood and whatnot. Many documentaries have been made, amongst those done by the old 90s TV show Unsolved Mysteries, the 2000 show UFO Files, the more current Ancient Aliens, and many, many others. Now, contributions were made in terms of dissemination, disclosure information, by Acting General Wilfred de Brouwer of the Belgian Air Force, who came forward after a time to tell what he actually knows. So I'm going to put up here various either YouTube or website addresses for you to, if you want to find out more information about this particular wave, or follow and delve into more information from the various contributors to the Belgian ufology effort. So they'll be listed here, but also I encourage you to go to my Facebook page, The Humaniverse, which will also give you those website and YouTube addresses. So there is a YouTube from General DeBrouwer, uh, highlighting and giving details on the Belgian UFO wave. Now, again, according to that wave, it had come out a few years ago, fairly recently, that uh, a perpetrator or a witness hoaxer came forward and described that a couple of the photos that were taken that kind of went viral and made its rounds around about the world in terms of popularization and whatnot, iconic photos that were made by this debunker. He came forward and admitted to it. So that left the debunkers enough fodder material for them to basically wipe clean and conclude that the entire Belgian UFO wave was a hoax, and it was debunked, and it was excused away as the various excuses that are used in their catalog. Atmospheric, weather phenomenon, mass hallucinations, and whatnot. Well, this debunker, or this hoaxer, only admitted to creating a styrofoam craft to take a couple of photographs that became viral. That had nothing to do with any of the other details of the case. So for the debunkers, watch out when you read the various debunkers' accounts and analysis and conclusions, is that they're going to take this one hoax photograph. There were two of them actually, and basically infer from that the entire wave and series of incidents were false. So watch out for that as you dive into more information. But excuse me. So I'll describe here in main contributors, more current to the Belgian ufology phenomenon. The SOBEPS, which the acronym SOBEPS, is the Belgian Society for Study of Space Phenomenon. Now, there is a sister organization too called COBEPS, COBEPS, which is the Belgian Committee for Study of Space Phenomenon. So these two organizations began actually in the 1980s, and they are kind of currently active today, although more dormant than actually active. Patrick Fernan is the current president of the COBEPS, which is the more recent organization. In 1984, also, too, another organization, Bufon Transology, BUFON Transology, is has been in activity, active status, and currently coordinates, curates, and disseminates information about different ufology cases throughout history, basically from the 1980s through to the present. Its current president and director, Bart Uderhagen. Bufon Transology. So I'm going to give you a website as it appears here for the Bufon Transology. It is, like I said, an active organization. And then I'll give you other websites here that I'll mention. UFOmeldpunt.be. And as you see here, the transology.be. Other contributors to disclosure, dissemination of ufology, UFO information efforts. The Brussels Times newspaper, brusseltimes.com, is very active. They share how will I put this? A popularity and activity parallel to that of various British publications, UK, British Times, and whatnot. MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, does have its own international chapter based in Belgium. Other contributors to the transparency of disclosure efforts, the National Archives of the UK. The website is here, and again on my Humaniverse website, nationalarchives.gov.uk. And then one other website, Arufon, ARUFON.org. So, again, in summary, the Belgian government disseminates ufology disclosure information on a case by case basis, but there's not so much cooperation from there as there is more from the various ufology organizations that we've just discussed here. So, I'll take a real quick morph here and a segue into the second part of today's discussion, and that's the efforts of the government of Italy with in relation to government disclosure of ufology information and all things UFO, UAP, OVNI, OVNI. So, fun facts about Italy: its population is a little bit over 60 million. That represents roughly 0.8% of the world's population. Uh, Again, like in sharing with the Belgian government efforts, their government cooperation is kind of lacking. They hold, I think, believably more information than what has been disclosed, at least in their older history. Anyways, they weren't very cooperative. But as we fast forward to modern times, there has been efforts on the part of neighboring territories in San Marino to promulgate and put the ufology study landscape and dissemination of information on a more international and continuing ongoing basis or whatever. And I'll get into and mention this real briefly here in the coming discussion. In history, the various government agencies, including the Italy Air Force, the Army, and Policios, who of various cities and territories and states, have been the main involvement in the disclosure, government, and activity. Also, too, one very important agency, the Centro Ufologico Nacional, CUN is its acronym, Centro Ufologico Nacional. It was formed many years ago, back in 1966, actually. Currently operates today, and as I mention more about San Marino and current efforts, I'll mention the CUN once again. So, in history, Italy does have a very rich history from its archives, going back to ancient Roman times. Lucius Absequens first wrote back in the early 100 BCs he spoke of round or circular shields, globes of fire, so to speak, weapons or missiles that were very fiery in shape and format. Um, these ancient histories of ancient Roman philosophers and writers, I talk about in my second book, the Humaniverse Guide to First Contact with ET. I do a deep historical dive in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and Lulius Absequens was one of the people mentioned in that particular section of my book there. So, fast forward into modern times, 1933. If there's anything in Italy close to a Roswell incident case, it was this case in Lombardy in the Milan area region, where there was a crash retrieval with bodies. Now, at the time, Italy was ruled a dictatorship by Benito Mussolini. He formed what is known today as Cabinet RS/33, and that was the formal Italy government study on this crash retrieval event in the Lombardy Milan region. Now, there was a very big cover up. Mussolini, in the study, enlisted the efforts of Guglielmo Marconi, who invented the radio. Marconi led this UFO study in which lasted for a few years. And back then, at that time, the contents of the study, not many of them actually got out. There was a very big cover up shortly after the study began, and which led to the popularization of the phrase "fascist UFO files," in which the citizens of Italy kept impressing upon the Italy government for many years to disclose what they knew from this Cabinet RS-33 study, but nothing ever really came out of it. Only until very recently, when current CUN president and active ufologist Roberto Pennati, he wrote a book called Lights in the Sky, which details all that we know, information and history about this 1933 crash retrieval effort. It was also rumored back then that because of the landscape in 1930s Europe with the pending World War and whatnot, that the Vatican got involved and actually made a deal with the United States government for transferal of at least some of these files and some of the crash retrieval physical evidence to be moved over somewheres in the United States. This is unfounded and not proven yet. So, but the rumors still persist these many years later. So fast forward into Italy's history, 1954, October, in the Tuscany region, a famous case which was written up in my book, my first book, The Humaniverse Guide to Better Reasoning and Decision Making. The Tuscany incident involved a soccer match, a filled stadium with over 10,000 watchers, and the two soccer teams witnessed craft that were flying very slowly across the sky, the daytime sky, stopped, started again, stopped again, started again, and then released as came down onto the field of play in and around the Tuscany area. Web type gelatinous substances. Now, what makes this case intriguing was that there was very detailed studies done not only by Italy but other governments. The French government, the UK got involved, and other European governments in the scientific analysis, which included chemical studies and biology studies, organic chemistry, and whatnot. Now, there was popular conclusions back then that these gelatinous materials turned out to be from a phenomenon in which groups of spiders were known, and this is a scientific fact. Spiders are known to migrate, especially some of the breeds in Europe, and the migration science involved indicates and proves it's a known fact that these species of spiders migrate in the fall of each year. So the timing was right of the year. This was October 1954. Where the spiders grouped together and became airborne due to the shifting winds, the trade winds, so to speak, in Europe over the Alps down into middle and southern Italy. So these gelatinous substances were concluded upon by some scientists and debunkers to be just merely waves of spiders flying through the air, so to speak, and releasing their webs. But unfortunately for the debunkers, this was taken into account, and further analysis was done on the organic chemistry, so to speak, of laboratory investigations. It was found that this gelatinous substance samples were not organic in nature. If they were from biological life, there would be very heavy organic chemistry involved. The chemical analysis and the conclusions from many different laboratories throughout Europe indicated that the 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 composition of these gelatinous substances were not organic in nature, but they were metallic in nature. They contain many metallic elements that were more indicative of coming from the output from engines or burning of engines of of some source, instead of from organic chemistry that would be indicative and coming from biological life. So that case, while it is 70 years old, is certainly not closed yet. There is going to be eventually further investigation. But at this point, with no more chemical trace substances may be left available, it probably will forever be left in the category of speculation, conjecture, and left up as to questionable, unless some other physical evidence comes up later on. But that is that Tuscany incident is the Italian Italy equivalent of our U.S. Roswell incident. So fast forward. Other case histories: 1973, an Air Italia plane in Naples and flying over Naples with the also witnessing from the Italy Air Force, witnessed a disc and a cigar-shaped craft. In 1978, there was a wave that basically culminated or peaked with the abduction of citizen Pier Fortunato Zanvretta in the Genoa area. This was an abduction in this wave, which in the Genoa area lasted a couple of years, and many videos and photographic evidence. And this is characteristic of Italy's contributions into the UFO disclosure area, is that they're very heavily concentrated with photographic, visual, and video evidence. Another wave in 1978 and 79, in and around Venice area, the Treviso airport, where thousands of witnesses observed a black water tank, what looked like a black water tank with a dome on it. Now, this it looked like what is currently described as our modern day Tic Tacs. These craft were about 80 to 100 feet in length. There's much visual, video, and radar analysis. Again, this happened around the Treviso Airport in the Venice area. The flight characteristics, the classical UAP, where sudden stops, hovering, slow movement, fast acceleration, 90-degree turns, and whatnot, instantaneous speeds. The various airplanes from the Treviso airport were commercial and military, were actually followed by these UAPs. And this continued on for a few months in late 1978-79. In 2004, the Canetto di Caronia helicopters were fired upon by UAPs. And then very recently in 2020, a mothership of sorts was witnessed by many people and observers around the Mount Etna area in Italy. So the government nature of government disclosures, as I morph into this area of the analysis, that as I mentioned, circling back from the beginning of my talk on Italy, the Centro Ufologico Nazionale, which was formed in 1966, or the CUN acronym, has been active and works in conjunction with the Italy Air Force. To date, they have studied and have accumulated over 13,000 case studies database. So very, very extensive indeed. in the early 2000s, there have been various international conferences, symposiums, and think tanks in especially to do in the current age and professions of ufology, exobiology, and exopolitics. Now, the governing independent nation of San Marino, has been the site willingly of many of these international think tanks and symposiums over the last 20 years. Now, I mention San Marino because it is currently very important. I'll introduce the current president of the Italy National UFO Center, Roberto Pennati. He is again the current president of the Centro Ufologico Nazionale, whose website I show here, and we'll also put on my Facebook the Humaniverse page. But Roberto Pennati is also the president and organizing member of a group called the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. You may have heard me speak about the ICER group back in some of my other videos, especially to do with China and Russia. Um, and I also did Facebook Live presentations on the ICER organization. Now, ICER began only in 2018 in symposiums and funded early on by the China government, actually. The current pandemic, worldwide pandemic, coronavirus happened, China and Russia bowed out of their participation, at least active participation in it. Roberto Pennati became the president, and the ICER group started and has maintained their current study called Project Titan, in which they've enlisted the government of San Marino and has their nation's agreement to hold and become the host of annual future continuing ufology symposiums, think tanks that would invite ufologists from all over the world to discuss and promote the efforts of enduring global acknowledgement and enduring global relationships with extraterrestrial intelligences and representatives from outside of planet Earth. The ICER group, under Roberto Pennati's direction, has petitioned the United Nations back at the beginning of 2022 in order to solicit the UN to reopen their now dormant ufology offices. Now, the United Nations had a ufology office created, agreed upon back in late 1978. They opened the office, but then it was closed after a very short time. And if you'll go back to my Facebook Live presentations, I do give a very great detail on the history of the United Nations efforts with ufology and their offices. But the ICER and Project Titan group is soliciting currently the United Nations to put the reopening of their ufology office back on the agenda. And if the ICER Project Titan group is successful in doing that, they will then, upon the agreement that they have with the San Marino government, to then move forward with the creation and the preparation for hosting various annual ufology events, as will occur each year on an annual basis in the future. So that concludes my two-part series with Belgium and Italy's government's ufology, UFO, UAP, OVNI disclosure efforts. Again, I thank you for tuning in as we're working through the world landscape here. I've done quite a few presentations here, and there is a few more. And you don't have to; these are independent in nature. In other words, you can view these. There's not really so much of a connection or sequential effort from one to the other. So I encourage you to go back into my YouTube channel and view the entire series here. And from the disclosure of the website information, you can follow up if you have particular interest in Belgium, Italy, or any of the other world UFO government disclosure efforts. I certainly have given you an awful lot of website information. So I'll sign off here. Again, this is Keith. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon with another installment. Thanks, and good day now.